Hi, this is Aaron Wilson from KPRC2 Sports. And we're talking about the Texans today and where they stand with free agency winding down and all of the moves that General Manager Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans made. You look at where they stand on offense, and that's an area that can still stand for some improvement, but I want to go over kind of where they sit in terms of the depth chart and not just the acquisitions they've already made and some of the subtractions, but what they might add in the NFL draft and in the year ahead. And we're going to discuss some contractual updates toward the end of the podcast. But let's start at quarterback. So with C.J. Stroud, they're hoping for a resurgent year with a new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, who's a Pro Bowl selection as a rookie, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, one of the best rookie seasons of any quarterback in NFL history. And you look at what C.J. Stroud did last year, there was a slight regression. He got the yips a little bit because he was hit so often, 52 sacks. I think C.J. Stroud can certainly play better football than what we saw from last year. And it wasn't like it was bad. It was just a reaction to the lack of creativity in the play calling from since dismissed offense coordinator Bobby Slowick, and also, the lack of protection. And they've been making a lot of moves, and we're going to get into depth with the offensive line, all the changes there. A major overhaul, completely changing the shape of the line and the philosophy with new offensive coordinator Nick Caley and promoted assistant offensive line coach Cole Popovich to now run game coordinator and offensive line coach. So with C.J. Stroud, their hope is that he'll benefit from a lot of these moves they've made, including adding Christian Kirk and adding left tackle Cam Robinson. And, they did trade Pro Bowl left tackle Laramie Tunsil. But, just starting at the quarterback position, for depth, it's Davis Mills, former starter, reliable guy, someone that they can count on to step in and play to an acceptable level when C.J. Stroud is sidelined. Case Keenum is a free agent. Don't necessarily expect to see Case back. Don't know if Case is planning to play. Will not shock me to see him with the organization in some capacity, but right now a free agent, and so to be determined if Case Keenum has to kind of role with the coaching staff or if he decides to just retire and take time with his family or play for another team. So haven't heard yet on what he plans to do, so it'll be interesting to watch that. Joe Mixon, getting him a year ago in that trade for a 7th-round pick, great value, one of the better investments they made, 3-year, $27 million contract extension. So you've got Joe back, and they're going to try to improve the run blocking. I thought at times last year there was really nothing he could do, like the Detroit game where he's just running into a stone wall, and they didn't block for him particularly effectively. Wasn't very consistent. Games like he had against the Colts in the opener and on Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys showed what he can do, and he was a Pro Bowl selection, and deservedly so. But I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone when it comes to this running game, and that Joe Mixon is capable of being a 1,500, 1,600-yard type of rusher. So I expect them to try to crank up the running game. And then you've got Dameon Pierce, who's a decent backup, had a good game against the Patriots, but he's more of a kickoff returner is his big role at this point, and he's been excellent at learning and adapting how to be a kick returner. They did resign Dario Ogunbowale as a third down back, and he's used sparingly in that role. He's primarily special teams, but he does play some on offense. British Brooks is coming off of a knee injury, had surgery. He's on track for the offseason. I expect him to compete with Jakob Johnson, the new fullback they signed. Jakob played for the Patriots, playing for Nick Caley. That was his position coach with New England. And he's a big guy at 6'3", 255 pounds. So he's a good lead blocker. He's played for the Raiders. He's played for the Giants. And so they bring in him, and they add some size. And it wasn't expensive. It was a small deal to bring in Jakob Johnson. So that was a free agent signing that the Texans did. And then looking at wide receivers position, a lot of people ask me about, a lot of comments about that position. Yes, they added a capable slot receiver in Christian Kirk, and that effectively replaces Stephon Diggs, who visited the New England Patriots this week. And you have back Pro Bowl selection Nico Collins, exemplary wide receiver, just needs to stay healthy, just play every game. Missed 5 games, and they were 5-1 at the point when he got injured and pulled his hamstring, missed 5, and still made the Pro Bowl for the first time. So you look at Nico, great body control, outstanding size at 6'4", 222, 4.4 speed. So he's everything. He's a deep threat. He's a red zone threat. He can run after the catch. He can be a possession receiver. He's a true number 1 wide receiver. And the Texans, compared to some of the other contracts around the NFL at wide receiver, they have him at a good price at a $25 million max value. They've restructured that contract once, and they did that this year to create cap space for some of all the spending that they did on the Derek Stingley Jr. deal, the Danielle Hunter deal, and a bunch of other deals that they've executed since the start of free agency. And just because they didn't have a lot of cap space did not stop them, because as Nick Caserio expressed confidence in at the NFL Scouting Combine, they have the mechanisms to create money. They can always find money. You're just pushing the credit card bill further down the road with void years, and you'll see that a lot in terms of how they negotiate contracts. So turning to the offensive line, then we'll discuss tight end. With the offensive line, you saw that they signed Cam Robinson, new starting left tackle at a reasonable price, 1 year, $14.5 million. Cam is coming off of a down year with the Vikings. Some of that is attributable to how long Sam Darnold would hold the football, waiting for Justin Jefferson to get open. So that did affect his stats, skewed it a bit. I think that he can play better with better coaching, and I think this change of scenery is good for him. I don't know necessarily if he wanted to go to the Vikings, but they shipped him out. The Jaguars were having a bad year, and they went ahead and moved on from him. I've heard talk that Doug Marrone, his former coach, didn't want him with the Patriots, all that sort of thing. I haven't heard anything from Doug Marrone directly. I think a lot of that is rumor, and this is a chance for Cam to reestablish himself. And if it goes well at age 29 with the Texans, who knows? Maybe they extend Cam Robinson. But right now they got him at a reasonable price at 1 year, $14.5 million. It's a base value of $12 million, so that's the max value. And this abdicates them from the need to plug in Titus Howard at left tackle, even though Titus can play there, left guard, or right tackle. So looking at the left side, you've got Laken Tomlinson, you've got Titus Howard. Laken hasn't missed a start since 2017, former Pro Bowl lineman. Best football likely behind him, but he's solid, he's reliable, he's very durable, and he'll answer the bell. So every week, he's in the lineup. And we'll see if the Texans still have him as a starter. I think, his contract means it can go either way, depending on what happens in the draft and depending on how other linemen perform that they have on the roster. But it's just a 1 year, almost $5 million investment in Laken Tomlinson. So he's 33 years old. They didn't want to spend big on Kevin Zeitler. They didn't want to spend big on James Daniels or Will Fries, some of the more expensive guards on the market. They like Tomlinson, so they get Tomlinson. And then moving over to center, to me, Jared Patterson is still the front runner to be the starting center. Played the best at the position, ended the season as a starter, stabilized the position after all the problems they had with the lines, with the stunts and the blitzes that they didn't pick up against the Green Bay Packers. You remember what Eric Wilson was doing against Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green and those guys. Kenyon since traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Moving over to right guard, Ed Ingram's a physical lineman, former second-round pick from LSU, was a disappointing starter for the Vikings, and they benched him, replaced him with Dalton Reisner. So this is a fresh start, again, recurring theme for this lineman. But Ed Ingram showed me, and I've watched some tape, and you guys have as well, I've been seeing a lot of your comments, a bit of a nasty streak. Someone that gets to the second level, knocks guys down. He gets beat, but sometimes he gets even, gets his revenge. He'll knock someone down. I just think he's acknowledged this before, he's got to become a more consistent lineman to really reach his potential. But maybe they can bring it out of him. But to me, definitely not a lost cause. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. He's due a little bit over $3 million. So we'll see what Ed Ingram can do. And then right tackle. They would love it if Blake Fisher can win the job. They drafted him in the second round. I thought he was a bit underwhelming as a rookie with 6 starts. But most rookie starting offensive linemen, kind of a recipe for disaster or mixed results like what we saw with Blake, including the Chiefs game where he had some problems in pass protection, allowed 3 sacks, 6 pressures. So they also added one of the biggest offensive linemen in the NFL in Trent Brown, 6'8", 380, former Pro Bowl lineman, played for the Patriots, played for the Raiders, was starting last year for the Bengals at right tackle, and then he tore his patellar tendon. He still has a long road to recovery. It's a small investment, 1 year, $3 million. He's the swing tackle. That's kind of the going price for a swing tackle nowadays. So he gives them a reliable backup at left tackle, at right tackle, and another person I think could throw his hat in the ring over at right tackle. And to me, probably the best right tackle option they have would be Titus Howard. And we'll see. I think that you're going to hear a lot about competition and want to have the best 5 on the field. So looking at everything there with the offense, a lot of changes. It can be a change in philosophy, change in, having to have a more aggressive, hard-nosed, tenacious mentality with the offensive line, with the blocking, they hope, and better protection, they hope, for C.J. Stroud. And looking forward, it's obvious. They need more help at wide receiver. They do have Justin Watson. They do have John Mechie III. They have Xavier Hutchinson, Braxton Berrios. So they've got some depth. They've got some competition. But I think they'll draft a wide receiver. And they hosted Matthew Golden from Texas for a visit. And they're going to host Kyle Williams from Washington State for a visit. And we'll talk more about Kyle. I'll be writing about him for clicktohouston.com. Very fast wide receiver, 4.4 speed. Scored 14 touchdowns last year. Good football player. Draft is completely unpredictable. You never know what they'll wind up with or which players would like to report on the activity. And, we'll see what it all means. But those are some of the things on offense that are going on. And to me, they need to draft wide receiver. I think they'll draft a couple of offensive linemen. And ultimately, we'll see competitions. Also, at right guard, I'd be remiss not to talk about him, will be Juice Scruggs. And to me, Juice could see him winning the job, another former second-round pick. So I think he'll compete with Ed Ingram, and you'll see them duking it out there at right guard. And Juice gives you some flexibility at center, but to me, they have not unseated Jaret Patterson, as I said, at the center position with any of the linemen they've added. And I don't think it's a slam dunk that, if Juice doesn't win right guard, then he becomes a center. So, he wasn't great at communication in terms of, really the line calls and his communication with C.J. Stroud. So we'll see how they look at it, and we'll learn more. And hopefully at some point we talk with Cole Popovich and talk with Nick Haley more about the offensive line, maybe after the OTA activities, in the minicamp. So we'll see, what they think and how do they line up. So, and how do these guys look, and very, very subjective opinions about spring football. So that's a lot of the change on offensive line, and it's a lot to recap and think about. But, when you think about where they are as an offense, this is where they need to improve. This is where they dipped in scoring and went up in penalties and struggled in the red zone and weren't a consistent running team. And that's why Nick Haley is here, formerly with the Rams, where he worked with Sean McVay as a tight ends coach and pass game coordinator, and with the New England Patriots, working with Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick and learning from Dante Scarnecchia and building a rapport with Cole Popovich, and now they reunite with the Texans. So we'll be hearing a lot more about those guys as we go forward. But yeah, that's the offense, and we'll talk about the defense and the special teams in a separate video. And please be sure to like and subscribe here at my YouTube channel, and check me out. I'm going to be on Sports Sunday with Randy McElvoy, and we're talking about the Texans and a busy week of activity. The Derek Stingley Jr. 3-year, $90 million extension. Danielle Hunter and his 1-year, $35.6 million extension. Signing bonuses of $25 million for Derek Stingley, $20 million for Danielle Hunter, and a total of $55.1 million for Danielle Hunter over the next 2 years, $54.1 million, 98% of it guaranteed for Danielle Hunter, a well-deserved raise, and they got out in front of both these things. I told you I talk about negotiations. When you do deals like that, you're setting the market before someone else can, and maybe you're saving some money on the dollar. And you look at, what might a cornerback extension for Sauce Gardner with the Jets look like, and what might it cost eventually if the Bengals ever do a deal for Trey Hendrickson. How much closer to the Max Crosby APY are they going to get, and even to Myles Garrett? But for Danielle Hunter, outstanding contract, and to have that much security now at age 31. A lot of guys at 31, their career is starting to slow down. To me, he's just getting better, like a fine wine, getting better with age. So I look at Danielle Hunter and how much he takes care of himself, his work ethic, how dedicated he is, and I think that he's got a lot of great football in front of him, and they are trying to go for it on defense. And so we'll be talking more about the defense. But yeah, make sure to check me out, please, on KPRC2 on television and at www.click2houston.com. And as I've said before, all of these channels are 100% free, including my Twitter/X account, @AaronWilson_NFL, and Instagram, AaronWilson7128. I'm also on Blue Sky and Threads. So yeah, appreciate you guys' support of the channel and all your comments and likes and suggestions. And look forward to our next conversation. Coming right up, we'll be talking defense and special teams and where the Texans stand with free agency winding down and the NFL draft rapidly approaching. Until next time.